All right, I had my first boyfriend when I was 3. His name was Chad Chalkley. I thought I had a picture of him. I asked my mom, and she dug through the stuff, and she found it was not Chad Chalkley, though. It was another boy. My mom's like, these 2 boys are actually kind of vying for your attention. She's like, the 3 of you were thick as thieves, and she's like, I kind of think the 2 of them were vying for your attention, but you were all about Chad Chalkley at 3. That relationship did not last, obviously, because we were 3. I had my first serious boyfriend in college. He lived in my dorm. He was a good-looking engineering student, and I fell hard and fast for him. And it was like I just wanted to be with him all the time, every day, all day. Whenever I was not in class or in the training room, I was with him, and I just wanted to be with him wherever he was. And then my first senior year, we decided to move in together. My mom's like, "That's a bad idea." She's like, "What happens if you break up?" I said, "Mom, we are in love. We're not going to break up. We're going to get married." And she's like, "Okay, I'm just saying it's a bad idea." Well, as moms usually are, she was right. You know, it started off as little things. I would catch him in a lie here or there. He got this necklace mysteriously, and I was like, "Oh, that's a cool necklace. Where did you get it?" "I don't know. It just arrived in the mail." And I was like, "Well, who sent it to you?" "I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know?" He's like, "I think it came from a relative in Ireland," because it was like a clover or something. And I was like, "Well, what did the what did the return address say?" "I don't know. I threw the box away." And I was like, sketchy. He wanted me to change my name major. He was kind of controlling. He's like, "You're never going to make any money as an athletic trainer. You need to change your major." And just like stuff like that. But it started off great. It started off as this awesome relationship. You know, and I just thought I was like, "Mom, save your money for the wedding, man. Once college is over, we're getting married. It's going to be awesome." All my dreams had come true. I met my husband in college, and it was going to be great. Well, my mom was right. And in New Year's, I had made plans with him, and I came back. He was in Athens where we went to college, and I came back from home. And he was being really weird. He's getting ready to leave. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, I'm taking a friend out to the movies." I was like, "What?" Turned out this friend was a girl. He'd been talking to another girl. And so we got this huge fight. We broke up. And here I am. I've got 6 more months of my lease because it's January and we have to live together until June. And here we are having to live together. It was awful because his new girlfriend now would come over. So not only are we broken up, but now I've got to sit there and watch them be together. Like it was terrible. My mom was right. But one thing that really stood out to me is about 2 weeks after we broke up, I realized that I was back to being myself. Over the 2 years, little by little, in tiny compromises, I had stopped being me, which is probably why he started dating someone else, because I was probably no longer the girl he had started to date. And I was just like, "Oh, it's so good to be myself again." And I had no idea while we were in it. We fought a lot. Towards the end, he almost hit me one time. It got bad. And I just didn't realize that I was in this really toxic relationship until I wasn't in it anymore. And then I was like, "Oh, so much better." And you'd think I would have learned my lesson. Well, I was teaching, a few years ago, I was teaching 8th graders how to identify a toxic relationship. And as I'm teaching them, I'm silently congratulating myself for getting out of that bad relationship in college. But I'm teaching the kids the hallmarks of a bad relationship. And as I'm doing it, I realize I'm in a borderline toxic relationship with a friend. I'm like looking at all the little factors of a toxic relationship. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, we kind of got that one." And, "Oh, yeah, we kind of got that one." And I realized that our friendship was not super healthy. And you'd think I would have learned my lesson, but it happens so gradually. When we get into relationships with people, usually, especially not family relationships, but people we meet, friends and spouses and whatever, it starts off great. And then little by little, compromise by compromise, you can end up in a really yucky situation. So I thought I'd talk about toxic relationships because when I when I made the little card that said like bad romances, breaking up with stress and anxiety and all that, people are like, oh, you're doing a relationship seminar. And I was like, no, I'm talking about breaking up with stress and anxiety. They're like, oh. So I was like, well, maybe I should talk about breaking up with like a bad relationship. So I'm going to end this series talking about what is a toxic, what are some of the signs of a toxic relationship. So in your program, I miscommunicated. I did not communicate well enough with Paula. There's a little chart. If you open up your bulletin, if you have a bulletin, and there's a little chart, what I want you to do is write the names of probably your three, just put them off to the side. 3 people that you are closest to that aren't your young children. So if you have an adult child, you could put them. But young kids don't count because you're stuck with them. So write the names of the 3 people you are in this little, like where this little box is. Write the names of the 3 people, like a chart. See up here I have it, like 1, 2, 3. Kind of expand the chart a little. And write real quick the names of the 3 people you're closest. So if you're married, your spouse. If you have adult children, you can put them, or your good friends. Who are the 3 people in your life who you are closest to? And if you don't have a bulletin, you can just do it on one of the note cards in the pew. We're going to do a little relationship test as we go through service today. Any of the women remember back in the days when we would take cosmopolitan tests? How Cosmo always had that, like, are you in a good relationship? And you have all these little key things and you check it off. We're going to kind of do that today without the other articles that would not necessarily be appropriate for church. I forgot about those till just now.
I don't know if they still print them.
Does Cosmopolitan still have a magazine? I don't know. Back when I was in my 20s, Cosmo was like the magazine that we 20-somethings read. All right, got your 3 names? All right, let's see how we do. So what you're going to do is as we go through, you can either do like a check or a minus. You could do like a score, like a 1 to 5. Because some of these things, like when I was teaching about toxic relationships and thinking about my friend, I'd be like, on a scale of 1 to 5, we're at like a 4. We're not 100% toxic, but we're definitely not 100% healthy. So you could do a number scale. You could do like this is how I rate wine when I go to wine tasting. You could put like a smiley face and a frown face and a straight face. Come up with some little way that you're going to indicate whether it's healthy or unhealthy, and you're going to rate each of these 3 relationships as I go through. So the first kind of test of a good relationship, a healthy relationship, is the give-take balance. Every relationship has give-take. My mom says marriage is never 50-50. She says it might be 60-40. Right now for my mom and dad, honestly, it's probably 90-10. It's probably 90% my mom, 10% my dad, because he's hurting. Like he's going through something hard. But there have been times when my mom is going through something hard and it was 90-10 the other way. So the give-take, there should be either back and forth. It should be if you are needing more support, then they are giving it. But later it should be the other way where you're giving support and they're taking it. Would an unbalanced relationship, if it's always one person is always the giver and one person is always the taker, or one person thinks they have to fix the other person and the other person's always getting fixed. Okay, that's codependence right there, is when one person is constantly being fixed and one person is constantly the fixer. So what's the balance like? So look at each of those 3 relationships. Do you think it's a good give and take, or is it really lopsided? And it could be you or the other. Don't just point the finger at the other person. You could be the taker in this situation. So for each of those 3 relationships, do a little score there, the give-take balance. What do you think? All right, the next one is conflict. Every relationship has conflict. And those of you who have been married, I'm sure you've had your fair share of conflicts in that relationship. There are healthy ways to deal with conflict. If both of you come into the conflict wanting to resolve the conflict, both of you come in willing to speak kindly to each other, both of you come in willing to compromise, or does one person just always give in because it's bad? I have a friend in her marriage, she always is the loser. Whenever there's a conflict, he yells and screams, she cries, and she gives in. And that breaks my heart for her, because that's not fair to her. So when you're in a conflict, how does that go down? Do you feel like you have healthy conflict? Do you feel like it's both of you kind of being heard and treating each other well? Or do you just avoid conflict because you know it's going to be terrible? That's also bad. If you never have a conflict because you're like, I don't want to risk them leaving. I'm just going to walk on eggshells and never say anything that will hurt their feelings. Never do anything that will rock the boat because I don't want there to be conflict. That's also not healthy. Because ultimately, nothing gets solved. So now I want you to rate each of those relationships based on conflict. Do you think the conflict is healthy in your relationships, or do you think it's not healthy in those relationships?
On a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, you could do it that way. Whatever your system is. All right, the next one is, I put it encouragement. I didn't know what to title this one. Stephen Furtick, he is the pastor at Elevation Worship, which is a huge church in Georgia, I think. And I just love him. He says that when you're married to someone, you should each be each other's CEO, Chief Encouragement Officer. So in a relationship, especially when you're out in public, you should be encouraging each other, not belittling each other. When you're hanging out with other people especially, do you constantly point out their flaws and tell everybody what a jerk they are and how they're stupid? Or are you encouraging them? When they have dreams, are you encouraging those dreams? When they mess up, are you like, it's all right, baby, you got this. We'll do better next time. Or is it belittling? Are you constantly if you're constantly compromising your values, if you're giving up what you think is to be important to be with that person, that is not encouraging. I used to tell my 8th graders, if you are being pressured by your significant other to do something that you don't feel comfortable and safe doing, then they don't love you. They love themselves. So we were talking about sex ed in that situation, but I'm like, if they're constantly pushing you to do something you don't feel safe or comfortable that goes against your values, they don't actually love you. They just love themselves. So are you in the relationship? Do they love you or do they just love themselves? Are they encouraging you or belittling you? Is it abusive? Emotionally, physically abusive ever? That's not good for a relationship. So now rate those 3 people in that category. Do you think that you are good at encouraging each other or not? Or do you discourage and knock them down on a regular basis? I would give you another pen, but it looks like you're sharing the paper too.
He's got his son, I got mine.
Okay. The bad thing is you probably each have each other on your paper.
I got all my boys. Big happy face. Is it healthy not to fight in a relationship?
That's a great question Mary asked. Is it healthy to not fight? If you don't happen to have any conflict, that would be amazing. But if there is conflict and you're just not dealing with it because you don't want to rock the boat or you don't want there to be problems, that's not good because then you're festering, right? But there are healthy ways to be like, this is what you do, this is the action, this is how it makes me feel, instead of like, you're the bad guy, you're terrible, you did this thing, you terrible person. But if you come at it like, hey, when you don't take the trash out, it makes me feel like you're taking advantage of me. That's an easy example. So I think there needs to be conflict when there is conflict, but it needs to be handled in a healthy
To get it out.
way. Yeah.
Zachary said him and Rachel have never had a fight, which is good, but I don't think it's,
Well, or maybe they deal with it before it gets big.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if they deal with the conflict as soon as it's a conflict so it doesn't become a huge blowout, I think that's okay. Yeah. If you wait until it's a big blowout, then it can get ugly.
I've never heard of anybody not having an argument of some sort, and he said they've never,
Wow.
they're not walked down the aisle yet. But
That's a good question for them to think about. Yeah. All right. The next one is isolation. I called it isolation. And this is what I did with my college boyfriend. I just wanted to be with him all the time. And I stopped hanging out with all my friends. I just wanted to be, I was so in love that I just wanted to be with him 24/7. And my roommate, who had been my friend for a couple years, she pulled me aside one day and she says, you remember how we used to talk about those pathetic girls who are only with their boyfriends ever? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, you've kind of become that girl. And I was like, but I love him. She's like, I mean, you do you. I'm just saying, you have become the girl that you said you'd never be. And I was like, and after I got out of the relationship, I was like, oh, she's right. It is healthy to have multiple friends. It is healthy when you're married to maintain friendships outside the marriage. Should that person be closer to you than your spouse? Maybe not. Especially if they're of the same gender as your spouse. But it is healthy. You should still have friends when you're in a dating relationship. You should still go out with your friends and hang out with your friends when you're in a dating relationship. And if you have one friend that's your only friend, and they're your only friend because if you try to go out and hang out with anyone else, they get mad and jealous, that's a problem. I had a boyfriend in college, a different boyfriend for a minute. He lived in Michigan. And I always had study tables, like Monday through Friday from 7 to 9. He called me on a Tuesday at like 8, and this is before cell phones. And so I wasn't home. And so I got home, and I called him. He's like, where were you? I said, I was at study tables, where I am every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. He's like, I think you're cheating on me. I said, why would you think that? Have I given you any reason to think I'm cheating? Well, because a friend of mine, he had a girlfriend from OU, and she cheated on him. I just think girls from OU cheat on their boyfriends. And we're done. That was pretty much the end of that one. Yeah. So if you have a friend, a boyfriend, a sibling who will not let you be friends with anyone else, that's problematic. If you have a spouse who won't let you hang out with your friends, that's problematic. You should not be isolated. You can spend a lot of time with them, but you should still have other friendships, and they shouldn't be like, who you texting? Who would you be texting at 9 o'clock at night? Are you cheating on me? Like, no. That is not healthy. So think about your 3 for relationships and rate them on that. Are you still able to have other friendships, or do they kind of like jealously guard you and isolate you? And in this one, for me, I isolate myself. Like, he didn't do it, I did it. Yes, sir.
So if you were to rate this on a scale of 1 to 10, which numbers would be good?
Whatever works for you. If you want to be like healthy is a 10 and unhealthy is a 1, or flip-flop, it's your rating system. Like I said, when I do wine, I do smiley faces. 3 smiley faces is I want to buy it. 1 smiley face is I would drink a glass of it if someone gave it to me. All right, I think I just have one more. My thing's upside down. All right, and then the last one, and this goes along with the jealousy, is your relationship built on a foundation of trust? I have never understood why anyone thinks it's a good idea to catfish someone on like online dating. Why would you put a picture that's 20 years old or if that's not you? Because when you show up to the date, now they're gonna realize their whole foundation of their thing is built on a lie. Or I love those like rom-coms where like she thinks he's a poor guy in town, finds out he's a millionaire or whatever. And everything's going great and they're so in love, and then the truth comes out and it all comes crashing down. And I think like, why did you lie in the first place? Of course, your relationship's gonna be a problem if there's a bunch of lies and you don't trust them. So a good relationship is built on trust. They're not lying to you. You're not suspicious. They're not suspicious of you. You can trust them. What you say to them stays with them and doesn't get around. When they say they're going to show up, they show up. When they say they're going to do something, they do it. Okay, that's also trust. Trust isn't just whether or not they're cheating on you. It's also like, can I trust you when I tell you something that's not going to get out? Can I trust you that when you say you're going to do something and be somewhere, are you going to do that and be there? So now rate those 3 relationships in the trust category. Look, relationships can be complicated. And as you're looking at your charts, maybe you have the same realization I did when I taught about toxic relationships. Maybe you've realized one of your close relationships maybe isn't as healthy as you thought it was. So then what your homework is for this week is to think about, what are you going to do about it? Like, is it so terrible that you need to get out of it? Is it really terrible and abusive that you need to leave? Or can it be salvaged? Can it be fixed? Is there something within you? Are you, like when I was looking at my friendship one, and even with my boyfriend in college, like I was the one that isolated myself. I was the one that stopped hanging out with my friends. I can't put all that blame on him. Relationships are two-way streets, right? So as much as we want to point the blame at them, oh, they're a bad person, we each have our own tendencies that maybe aren't healthy. If you've got one category that all the way across there have low numbers, that might be an indication to you that maybe there's something in you that makes you not necessarily the safe person. Or if one column has a lot of low numbers, maybe you and God need to talk about that relationship this week. What's happening there? Can it be solved? Can it be fixed? Do you need to have a conflict? Do you need to say the things that are happening? My friend who I realized was a toxic, we had a big blowout. We almost were done. We had a big conflict. And coming out of that, things have been better. I really prayed to God about that relationship. I actually said, God, I'm done. Like, I don't want to be in this friendship anymore. This is hard. And then I felt like God didn't let me out of it. And I was like, ugh. But now that relationship is good. God worked in that relationship because I said, all right, God, like if you're going to make me stay with this person, then fix it. Because God can work in their hearts and God can work in my heart. And God helped me see some unhealthy behaviors that I had. So think about this chart as you go through this week, when you're praying and when you're considering time in your quiet time, when you're driving, what can you do to strengthen those relationships? And as you start to enter into other relationships, keep this in mind. What makes it a healthy relationship? Like my experience from my college boyfriend will make me a better girlfriend, someday wife to someone else because I learned lessons coming out of that. I learned lessons about some of the bad habits that I have that I need to break. And I had to dig through that. Like I had to pray about that. Like, God, why am I so codependent? What happened there? And God has been working with me to help me get that crap out of my soul. And so think about that this week. Think about those relationships. Pray over those relationships. How can you make them better, especially if they scored low? And all of that's people said. Amen. Oh, I forgot the Bible verse. Sorry, guys. Wait, hold on. Don't say amen yet. So what does Jesus have? I was thinking about. The clicker doesn't want us to do this Bible verse. I was thinking about what does Jesus say about relationships? And I came back to this one. Love God first. If you love God first, that'll help all your relationships. I watched that Jesus Revolution movie, and this guy and girl fall in love. And he says to her, if you get between me and God, we're done. And I love that. That should be our mentality with all relationships. If you get between me and God, we're done. You need to love God first, and then love them as you love yourself, which means you love yourself enough to get out of a really toxic relationship. But love God first. Put Him first. And let Him help you be a better person in a relationship. Now, and all of God's people said, amen. Sorry, guys. All right, if you have not surrendered your heart to the Lord, you can come down during this song. We would love to walk you through that. If you need any prayers, if you would like to come see me after service, I would love to pray for you. So we're going to sing Something Beautiful, like literally, Something Beautiful. If you'd like to stand up and sing with us, number 507.